Namaste, everyone, and welcome to our first podcast. And this is the Ramanand Sagar Ramayan. And Shala, which episode is this?
This is Season 1, Episode 1.
Excellent. And what is the IMDB description of this episode?
It says, the saga of Ramayan God's prayers to Lord Vishnu, King Dashrath's yajna invoking blessings for his son, birth and childhood of Sri Ram.
Very good. And the original air date of this was on the 25th of January, 1987. And the title of it is Birth and Childhood of Lord Rama. On IMDb, it gets a rating of 7.9 stars. The episode is narrated by Ramanand Sagar himself. And Vishala, where can people view this episode of the Ramayana?
We viewed it on YouTube. I'm not sure if there's anywhere else we could view it.
Right. So we saw it on YouTube, and a link to the episode will be posted in the show notes. So, what are your overall thoughts on this episode?
So based off of past Ramayans that I've seen and read, the show is pretty accurate to what I've seen before, and I liked that. So in the beginning there was an explanation talking about how it was translated into different languages and stuff. I think that was a little interesting. Like how they talked about the different ways they would say the Ramayana and how they would translate it to different languages and stuff.
Okay. So for me, my opinion of it, so remember I saw this back in the 80s. And back then we didn't have DVR, you couldn't go back and rewatch it, you couldn't stream it or anything like that. If you missed it when it came out on TV, you didn't get to see it again, right? So I saw it the one time, and when we lived in Jersey, I bought the DVDs for it, and I've always meant to watch it, and I just never got around to it. Now, watching it again for the first time since I've watched it back in the 80s, I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised in that I'm a little bit disappointed in the pace of it. Meaning that, to me, it went a little bit too quickly. The first episode ends with the birth of Sri Ram, right? And there's so much in the Ramayana that's between the beginning of it and when we get to that. I feel like this episode could have been easily 3 or 4 episodes because there's so much to put in there. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that. I really didn't remember it being the way it is. But, I understand. A lot of times studios decide that they want to do things a certain way. They feel like by the time the end of the episode, Sri Ram has to be there, Sri Ram has to be born. And, that could possibly be the reason why they feel like the people wanted to see Sri Ram as soon as possible, so they cut most of that out. So that could possibly be it. But that's what struck me the most in the beginning, was seeing how quickly the show started.
I was able to get the story and stuff so far, so I was able to understand the story and everything. So I think that's what really matters. As long as you understand what's going on, then
yeah. And it was the same for me as well, right? So the first time I saw it, my understanding of the Ramayana was a lot more limited than it is now. So when I saw it, to me, if that's what it is, then that's what it is. It's like you watch a movie about a book, but you never read the book. You think that what's in the movie is everything that was in the book. And then you go read the book and you're a little bit disappointed because the movie didn't cover a lot of the stuff that was in there. It's kind of the same concept that we have happening here right now. But, I mean, if this is the first time you're seeing it and you find some pleasure in it, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want out of it. All right. So let's start with a recap of the program, what we saw. So we begin with the opening credits, and it shows the sources. The thing about these credits is most other shows you can just ignore the opening credits, but there's so much information in these opening credits that you kind of have to pay attention to it. So it talks about the sources that they went to for the information they needed to create the episode. And immediately it shows the Valmiki Ramayana and the Tulsidas Ramayana, the Sri Ramcharitmanas. And do you know who these characters are, who these people are? Do you know who Valmiki is?
He's the original writer. Should I say writer or poet?
He is the original author.
Okay, author.
He is the original author, yeah. And the story of Valmiki himself is such a beautiful, beautiful story. It's one that's full of intrigue. It's one that's full of drama, right? And it's one at the end that has retribution. It really is a very beautiful story. So let me tell a little bit about him in this episode. And in the next episode, we can probably talk about Tulsidas. So Valmiki, this information is coming from the Adbhuta Ramayana. He was born in Treta Yuga, and he was born as a Brahmin. Now, one of the things that you find in the Ramayana, it says, and this was taken from the appendix of the Ramayana, Appendix 1 of the Adbhuta Ramayana. It says there are multiple stories, multiple versions of the life of Valmiki, but this one is the primary version that they have. He was born in Treta Yuga as a Brahmin, and he was given the name of Ratnakar. According to Vedavyasa's Adhyatma Ramayana, in Ayodhya Kand, he was married to a tribal woman from the Kirat tribe on the eastern fringes of the Himalayas. It is said that he had many sons with her, and to maintain his family, he used to rob and kill travelers. One day he targeted the Saptaharishis, the 7 great sages of Sanatana Dharma, who decided to fix him. They decided that this is a great soul, they could see it, and they decided that they wanted to try to fix him. So they asked him, go and ask your family that when the time comes, will they help you to pay for this karma that you are accumulating? So Ratnakar, what he did, he tied them up and he said, okay, I will prove to you that my family is there for me. So he tied them up. He went and asked his family, but they told him, no, it is your dharma, it is your duty to provide for us. However you decide to do it, that is on you. So having heard this, he realized that, wait a minute, I'm on my own here. I am doing all of this for my family, and my family is telling me that there's nothing that they can do for me. So Ratnakar was so shocked that he immediately became remorseful. And he returned back to the sages and he told them what had happened, and he fell to their feet and he asked them, please forgive me for what I've done. Immediately he starts to repent and he's like, okay, so tell me, how can I get over this negative karma? What it is do I have to do to get away from this? And the Sapta Rishis told him, listen, the greatest thing that you can do is to chant the name of Rama. If you chant the name of Rama, all karma will be forgiven. So Ratnakar says, I cannot say that word. I am a thief. I am a bandit. All I know to do is kill. And the Hindi word for kill is mara. So they told him, okay, if all you can say is mara, then you chant mara. You think about Rama, but you chant mara. So Ratnakar, he finds a calm corner, someplace that's quiet and that he can do tapasya, and he sits there and he starts to chant Mara, 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 Mara. And from going to Mara, 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 he starts to go Maram, 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 Maram. And eventually, he's not saying Mara anymore. He's thinking about Rama and he's chanting Rama. The Saptarishis leave him while he's in tapasya, and he stays in tapasya for years. He stays there for so long, an anthill builds itself around him. The Saptarishis come back after many years and they revive him, they wake him up. And they see the anthill that he's on. And they rename him Valmiki. And the word Valmiki means he who sits on an anthill. So this is the story of how Valmiki got his name, how he changed from being a bandit and a thief and a murderer to being a great saint. Eventually, he has his own ashram, and one day he's walking, and there are these two birds that's sitting on a branch, and they're whistling, and it's in the springtime. It's two lovebirds that's there, and as he's listening to these two birds, a hunter is coming, and he shoots one of the birds and kills the bird. And Valmiki, he becomes so upset with his hunter that he curses the hunter. And when he curses the hunter, it is said that the curse was said in Sanskrit, and it was phrased so beautifully that Narada Muni himself heard the words of Valmiki. And he comes to Valmiki and he tells him, your composition, this verse that you have just uttered is so beautiful that I want you to write the Ramayana. I want you to tell the story of Sri Rama. And in brief, he tells Valmiki the story of the Ramayana. Valmiki listens to the story, and he is so overwhelmed by it. He says to Narad Muni, he says, Prabhu, this is such a beautiful story. I don't think I can do justice to it. So he refuses Narad Muni. Narad Muni leaves, but he comes back shortly after. And he tells him again, and he tells him the entire story of the Ramayana, but in a much longer version, right? So Valmiki now, think about it. The first time you heard the little bit, you said, no, I can't do that. It's too much for me. You come and you hear more again, that wouldn't tell you yes, right? So that's what happened. Valmiki told him, no, this is just too much for me. I cannot do justice to this. I am sorry, Narada. I have to refuse you. Narad Muni, he goes back to his father. He goes to Lord Brahma, and he tells Lord Brahma, because it is Lord Brahma that sent him originally to ask Valmiki to write this. When Lord Brahma hears that Narad Muni had failed, he came himself. Imagine Lord Brahma himself is coming to you, right? Lord Brahma himself comes to Valmiki, and he tells Valmiki, you have to write this Ramayana. And he gives him a complete story. This is what happens from the beginning to the end. And we need you to tell the world the story of the Ramayana. And when Lord Brahma tells Valmiki, this is what it is I want you to do, that is when Valmiki decides, okay, I will do it. I will write the Ramayana. And so this is the story of Valmiki. So Valmiki, once he decides to write the Ramayana, he is given the name of the Adi Kavi. Adi Kavi means the original poet. So all sources of the Ramayana, all versions of the Ramayana rather, comes from Valmiki. So the most complete source of Ramayana that you could get, version of Ramayana you could get, is to read the Valmiki Ramayana. So when the credits start rolling and you see Valmiki Ramayana and the Sri Ramcharitmanas, which is the Tulsidas Ramayana, those are considered to be the most complete. Right? The other sources that it shows is the Kamba Ramayana, which is a Tamil version, the Bhavarat Ramayana, which is the Marathi Ramayana, the Marathi version. It also tells you about Ramayans from the Telugu version, the Bengali version, the Urdu version, etc. So there's a lot of sources that they went to. But the most important one here would be the Valmiki Ramayana that they went to, and that one is written in Sanskrit. It cuts to Tulsidas, and he's composing the Sri Ramcharitmanas. And the narrator talks about him as being challenged by the scholars of the time about the dialect that he is using to rewrite the Ramayana. And why is it that Tulsidas is writing the Ramayana in this dialect? Why do you think?
Because it's important for everybody to understand it, and for people that don't know Sanskrit or that language, they probably want
Exactly.
to be able to understand it.
Exactly. So Tulsidas is saying that we want to bring the Ramayana to the common folk. Sanskrit is not widely spoken anymore, and the dialect that he is speaking is something called Awadhi, and it is a dialect of Hindi. So when we read the Tulsidas Ramayana, that's actually what we're reading. We're reading Awadhi. It's very close to Hindi. It's said to be on par with Hindi. It's almost the same thing, but it's really just a dialect of it, right? So he decides that he wants to write the Ramayana in this dialect so that everybody can enjoy it. And although all of these scholars are telling him, no, you can't do it, no, you can't do it, he sticks to his guns and he says, I'm going to do it. And he writes Ramayana in Awadhi. And that is the version of Ramayana that we use today. So the narrator, Sri Ramanand Sagar, he comes and he starts talking about the Ramayana being a historical document. What do you think his evidence of the Ramayana being a historical document is? Why do you think he would say that? Because the Ramayana is this book that everybody reads, and we don't know for sure that what's in it is true, right? Is that accurate?
Well, there are lots of places out there and stuff that you could visit, and like as proof that like
right, that's true. So you can actually follow the Ramayana trail. You could go to India and you can start from Ayodhya and you could follow the trail of the Ramayana and you could actually see the different places that Sri Ram had visited. You can see the effects of what he left. You could go to Google now and you could see a map of the bridge that goes to Lanka. It still exists and you can see it. So when we talk about the Ramayana as being a historical document, it is the history of India. It is the history of these events that actually happened. It is 100% real. Another way that we can tell is for every place that Sri Ram visits, there are stories that's being told about him. And these stories find themselves into different versions of the Ramayana. So sometimes you will hear a story from one Ramayana that you wouldn't hear in any other Ramayana, and that is because there's a story that's incorporated from that area that Ramayana is being spoken. So that is another way that you know, okay, this is a historical document, that these stories come from this place because it's something that actually happened. So another thing, and this is something that kind of confused me when I heard him say it. And I'm thinking it's probably something that's just kind of mixed up in translation. He calls the Ramayana a mythological document. What is a mythological document that you think?
like not completely true. Like
something that's not true,
like
right?
legend.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I went ahead and I looked up what that would mean, a mythological document. And it says mythological writing is a narrative genre in modern literature and film where an artificial or fictionalized mythology is created by the writer of prose, poetry, and other literary forms. So what it's saying is that everything that you read here, if we call it a mythological document, is that it is not true. And I feel like that is not accurate. I think that that's not really what it is that he meant to say. So that's why I'm hoping that what we heard there was just a mix-up in translation. He also speaks about the reach of the Ramayana to different countries and about it being translated into different languages. Right? What do you think the effect of that would be? Imagine you have this one thing, this one story, and then because we're trying to spread this, we start translating into different languages. You ever played the game Telephone?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you start and when you end?
Normally when you like say something, then normally by the end it's going to be something totally different.
A lot of times that's the case, right? You might get some of the original essence of the message, but a lot of times it's not the identical thing that ends up at the end of the line. So this is one of the problems that we have with different versions of the Ramayana as well. So we start with the Valmiki Ramayan, and then it starts to go into these different languages, goes all over the world. And then what we find happening is that whoever is rewriting the Ramayan, and I'm sure they're doing it with the best of intentions, whoever is rewriting the Ramayan, they write it based on their knowledge, their understanding of it. And this is what they are rewriting and putting into the Ramayan. And a lot of times things get left out, things get added in, and it comes out being not 100% of what went in. So when we talk about it being spread to different countries and different languages, this is something for us to keep in mind. It's like that game of telephone. It changes as time goes on, right? How many different versions of the Ramayana do you think there are?
I think I heard there was over 300 versions.
Yeah, there's over 300 different versions of the Ramayana. And that is because, again, of the different places that it was translated to go into, right? And other people also read the Ramayana and they decide they want to write their own commentary. What age was the Ramayana originally written? Do you know?
I'm not sure. No.
So you know about the 4 yugas?
I have heard about it.
Right. So there's 4 yugas in the cycle of time. There's Sat Yuga, the age of truth, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And Sri Ram was born in Treta Yuga. So when Valmiki Ji started writing the Ramayana, Sri Rama was still on earth. So he started writing the Ramayana with Sri Rama still being there. Sri Ram took avatar in Treta Yuga. So the Ramayana itself was written in Treta Yuga, and it was written while Sri Ram was performing it. Right? So that is when the Ramayana was written. So after we see all of that, finally now we get to the opening scene. So this took, I think, like 12 minutes of the original from the start to get to the opening scene of the Ramayana. And the scene opens with Sri Vishnu and Lakshmi Devi, and they are relaxing on this bed created by this huge snake. The snake is Sheshnag. And the snake itself is on this giant ocean. The ocean is called the Shir Sagar, and it's supposed to be the ocean of milk. This is where Lord Vishnu himself resides. And the Devatas, led by Lord Brahma, they approach Lord Vishnu and they're singing his praises. The composition, the name of it is Jai Jai Suranayak. It's one of the most beautiful compositions in the Tulsidas Ramayana. And they came here, they're asking for something. Do you remember what it was they were asking for?
They were asking for help because Ravan and Kumbhakarna, they're down on earth and they're creating all this trouble and stuff. And
exactly, they're wreaking all kinds of havoc, making all kinds of trouble. And why do you think that they had to go to Lord Vishnu? I mean, the Devatas themselves couldn't handle this. He's just a demon, right? Mm-hmm. Ravan and Kumbhakarna are just demons. Why can't they themselves handle this problem? Why did they have to go to Lord Vishnu? All right, we'll get to that. See, I got you. So, there's a lady that's with the group. Did you see her? Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about her when she... Mm-hmm. You know who that is?
For some reason I can never remember like her name, but Mother Earth. It's
Mother Earth, right? This is Prithvi Ma, mm-hmm. and she's with them. And this also, so just like we just talked about, there's different versions of the Ramayana. It's retold. The stories are retold in different ways. The story of Prithvi Ma and how she got to this point is also told in different ways. But this is one way that it was told. That Prithvi Ma, after having to deal with Ravan and Kumbhakarna, right? They are on earth and they're wreaking all kinds of havoc, making all kinds of trouble, and she just cannot bear the weight of the sin anymore. So she leaves and she takes the form of a cow and she goes to Lord Brahma and she tells him, the weight of the mountains, the weight of the oceans, the trees, the people, all the animals, I can take it. I can take all of that. That does not bother me. But the weight of these two sinners, the amount of atrocities that they are causing, the weight of the sin that they are generating, I cannot bear this anymore. And I need your help. I need for somebody to destroy these two demons that are causing all of this trouble. So Lord Brahma says, Prithvi Ma, don't worry. We will go to Lord Vishnu. And we will ask Lord Vishnu. Now the reason they have to go to Lord Vishnu and they cannot take care of it themselves is because there is a boon that was granted to Ravana when Ravana was doing tapasya. And that boon, go ahead.
He couldn't harm any of the devatas or other gods.
Well, the devatas couldn't harm him. Ravana,
yeah.
Yes, Ravana asked Lord Brahma for invincibility and immunity from all the devatas, all the gods, from all the rakshasas, all the demons, right? Heavenly spirits, serpents, wild beasts. He did not, however, ask for protection against humans. And he didn't ask for protection against monkeys because he thought that these creatures were so low, there's no way that they can pose any threat to him. So he did not ask. So that is why the devatas themselves could not deal with this threat. They had to go to Lord Vishnu. So Prithvi Ma, together with Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, Brihaspati, all of these devatas that you see on the screen, they all go to Lord Vishnu. They're singing Jai Jai Surnayak, they're praising his name, and when they get there, they ask him. They explain to him, this is the situation, this is what's happening, and they ask him for his help. And then they remind him of this promise that he had made. And the promise is, in Bhagavad Gita, it tells it most beautifully. It says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanar bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyam. That whenever and wherever there is a decline in righteousness and a rise in unrighteousness, the Lord says that he will manifest himself for the protection of the good and the destruction of the evil. He is born from age to age. So, because of this promise, Lord Vishnu assures them that he will take avatar and he will be born in the house of Dashrath. And he would be taking a 4-part incarnation as the 4 sons of Dashrath. And he will eventually defeat Ravana and Kumbhakaran. When Lord Vishnu says this, Brahma orders the devatas that they should all take the form of monkeys and go and wait for the advent of the Lord, so that when that time comes, they will be there to help him. So this is why there are so many monkeys in the army when they fought the war against Ravana. It's Rama, Laxman, and then all these monkeys, and Jamwant, who was the bear. So now we cut to Dashrath's palace. And Dashrath is there, and he is speaking to Guru Vashishta. And he tells him of his disappointment in not having a son. And he says, are you to tell me that after my entire lineage, he calls out all of these great personalities, after my entire lineage, it is going to end with me because I do not have a son? The queens, now he has 3 queens. Do you know why he has 3 queens?
I don't know why, no.
Okay, so remember, Ramayana is based on dharma, and it is the dharma of the king to make sure that there is progeny, that there is somebody to take over for him, an heir to his throne when he dies. So he's married to Queen Kaushalya originally, and he does not have a son. And Queen Kaushalya tells him, try getting married again. Now, at this time, nowadays you can't do this. It's not proper to do it anymore. At this time, for a Kshatriya, it is within his dharmic right for him to do this. And because his queen tells him to do it, he goes and he marries again, and he gets married to Sumitra. But the same thing happens. And then Sumitra and Kaushalya goes to him and says, let's try one more time. He goes and he marries Kaikeyi, but the same thing happens. Right? So with this happening, this is why there are 3 queens there. The 3 queens also echo the concern of Dashrath to the guru and ask him, is there nothing that we can do? Will our lineage really end with us? And Guru Vashishta tells him, there is a yagna that you can perform. And this yagna is called the Putra Kameshti Yagna. You perform this and you will get a son. But he also tells them that I cannot perform this yagna. Now, Guru Vashishta, we have to understand, Guru Vashishta is no joke. He is a very powerful sage, right? He is one of the most powerful sages of the time. But this is not his area of expertise. So he tells them, I cannot perform this yagna. You need to go to Rishi Shringa and have him perform this yagna for you. The queens, they become elated. And they said, immediately, let's start making preparations. Go and summon Rishi Shringa to come and perform this yagna. And the guru says, hold on, wait. If you want something from somebody, you don't call them to your house to tell them to give you that. You have to go to them. There's a level of humility involved in asking a person for something. So when they hear that, they decide, okay, we will go. And I think it was Raja Dashrath that said, okay, let's get ready the horses, let's get ready the elephants, and we will go there and we will arrive in all this pomp and circumstance. And the Guru again tells them, no. If you want to go to ask Rishi Shringa to come and perform this, you have to go with humility. You cannot go as a king. You have to go as a regular person. You have to go as a normal person. So the Raja Dashrath decides, I will not go as a king. I will go to him as a beggar with all the humility. And then the next scene you see, Raja Dashrath, he's walking towards the ashram of Rishi Shringa. And Rishi Shringa is pleased. He is so pleased to see Raja Dashrath in his humility coming to ask him for this favor that he agrees to do the yagna. We then cut to the yagna being performed, and Agni Dev appears and he presents Raja Dashrath with the kheer, which he should now share among his queens. And did you notice how the kheer was shared? How did he give it to them? How he shared it. What portions did he share it?
He gave some to Kaushalya and some to KK, and then they both gave it to Sumitra.
Right. So he didn't actually give any to her. He gave it to the two of them. And a lot of times people are like, well, did he not love her the same way that he loved the other two queens? And that is not the case. This was a game that they used to play all the time. It was something between themselves that they would do, and this is what we saw here. This was them just, playfully sharing the kheer among themselves.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yes. So after this, it cuts to Raja Dashrath, and he is just restlessly pacing back and forth in the palace. It's a time for the birth of the children. And all of a sudden he hears the shankha. He hears that conch shell. And he knows that the first child is born. And sure enough, the maidservants of Kaushalya approaches and they give him the good news that he has a son. Then we get to see somebody that's going to be very important coming up. That is Mantara.
Oh, yes.
This is the maidservant of Queen KK. So she shows up for the first time here. We see her, and she gives the good news that KK has a son as well. And the same happens. Sumitra's maidservants show up, and they tell the king, you have twins. So now he has 4 children. And at this point on screen, we see the celebration start. The entire palace is celebrating. From there, it cuts to Guru Vashishta naming the children. He names the first one, the eldest son, he names that child Rama. The second child, the child of Queen Keikei, he names Bharat. And the children of Queen Sumitra, he names Laxman and Shatrughan. And he tells them that all 4 boys will be close to each other. However, Rama and Laxman are going to be extra close to each other. They will be each other's shadow. And he tells them that Bharat and Shatrughan, it will be the same. These 2 boys will also be very close. And with this, the episode comes to a conclusion. So, do you think I missed anything? I think I covered all of it, but do you think I missed anything?
No, you're good. But I remember you're.
All right, so let me ask you this. What was your favorite part of the entire thing?
When they were naming the children, the looks on the queen's faces and even on King Dashrath, like they looked so happy, and I love that a lot. The way that they. There
are some amazing expressions, I gotta tell you, in this episode. When Dashrath is in Rishi Sringa's ashram, and the way he's looking at him, he's just staring at him, and I'm thinking to myself, is he staring because he wants tears to come out? Is the actor trying this to get tears to come out? The way he's looking at him, it's just it's amazing. So my favorite part is in the beginning, during the credits, once they start singing the Ramayan in the different languages, you hear the different tunes, a different way to sing it. And to me, that was just so beautiful. I just immediately wanted to go and look for these different versions of the Ramayana on YouTube and just play them and get into it, because we're accustomed to the Tulsidas Ramayan singing in Doha and Chaupai form. And these other forms, they're also so beautiful. What stood out to you?
Something that stood out, whenever like the songs that they were playing, the music like matched what they did. So for example, when the queens ate the kheer, is that how you pronounce it?
Kheer, yeah.
Kheer. They were like singing about how Kausalya and KK were giving it to Sumitra. Like the music just like matched like with what they were doing.
Yeah, that was pretty good. What stood out to me was the scene with Guru Vashishta. There's a lot happening there. Guru Vashishta is telling them that they need to be humble and approach Rishi Sringa in order for him to perform this. What is not as apparent, but it is also very striking, is the same thing that he is telling them to practice, which is humility. He himself is at that moment also practicing the very same thing. Because think of the power that Guru Vashishta has. And yet he is saying, I am not qualified for this. And he takes a back seat to Rishi Sringa and tells him, you go ahead and you perform this. So he's not only telling them to be humble, he is teaching humility himself and showing them that, look, I also am humble. So I thought that really stood out to me, and it was a very good example. So he's not only teaching them, he's also showing by example. Is there anything that you disliked about the episode?
Something I disliked was how the other scholars were opposed to Tulsidas translating the Ramayana, because like when I first saw it, like my mind immediately thought that was a little weird, because what he was doing was good. He was trying to make it better and easier for everybody else to understand the story, but I don't get why people were opposed to that. So.
Well, there could be a lot of reasons to that. Number one, I mean, you always want to think that people mean well. And it could be that they just didn't have faith in Tulsidas Ji and his ability to do it, right? It could be a genuine thing, and they understand the importance of Ramayan. They understand how great this script is, and they just don't think that he has the ability to do it. So that could be one thing. The next thing is sometimes great men are afraid of losing their own power, and they feel like if everybody knows this knowledge, everybody has this knowledge that they have, that means that they will lose power. So they would probably fight against this information being shared. So there's a lot of reasons, and like again, you always want to try to find the best one. You want to look at people in the best light. You don't want to go and jump to the most negative conclusion that you can. Mm-hmm. So that could be the reason why. For me, I'll tell you, when we came to the birth of the children, I was very disappointed. I was so disappointed in that. It's not at all the way I remembered it, and it just felt rushed. This is in Ramayan such a beautiful, beautiful part of Ramayan. When Sri Ram, the time comes for Sri Ram to be born, Queen Kaushalya is in her chamber, and Sri Ram takes avatar in the form of Lord Vishnu. He first comes to her in the form of Lord Vishnu, here with his 4 arms, and she is seeing him, and she has her hands clasped, and she's praying and she's thanking him for coming. But then she says, Lord, I want you as a child. How am I going to play with you in this 4-armed form? How am I going to treat you as a child in this 4-armed form? I want you as a baby. And there's a composition in Tulsidas Ramayan by Pragata Kripala Dina Dayala. And for anybody listening to this podcast, I would recommend you go and you find it and you read it. It is such a beautiful composition, and it perfectly explains what happens in this chamber of Kaushalya Mata as Sri Ram is born. And as Kaushalya Mata asks Sri Ram to change into the form of the baby, he obeys, because this is his mother. The Lord sees Kaushalya Mata as his mother. And what do you do with your mother? You obey. He takes that form of a baby and he starts to cry. And then once he starts to cry, then everybody becomes alert. Everybody now knows that Sri Ram has taken avatar. It is said that at the moment that he takes avatar, it's midday. And the weather is calm, it's cool. And ever since then, ever since the first time I heard that katha, I've always paid attention for Ram Navami, what the weather is like at midday on that day. And it is always identical to the way it is said in Ramayana. It is such a beautiful thing. So I was really, really disappointed in the way that this was portrayed. There was so much that was packed into this episode. I felt like everything was rushed and the episode didn't get a chance to breathe. I feel like this, like I said earlier, could have been stretched out into 4 episodes easily with what we know is in the Ramayana up until that point. And I'm really hoping that the episodes to come will kind of take its time. It will take some time to breathe, and it will allow us to really enjoy what is happening in the Ramayana as it's happening. And that brings us to the end of this, our first podcast. Vishala, why don't you tell the people how they can find us?
You could search the Hindu Pod on Facebook. You can search us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can email questions, comments, and suggestions to thehindupod@gmail.com.
This has been a presentation of the Hindu Pod. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and rate this episode, since it helps to bump us up in the feeds, which helps others to find the podcast. Please send comments to thehindupod@gmail.com. That's thehindupod@gmail.com. You can text us at 281-804-9616 or just search Facebook for The Hindu Pod. If you live in the Houston area, you can find us on most Sundays at the Sanatan Dharam Mandir for Sunday morning satsang. They are located at 12918 Player Street, Houston, Texas 77045, and are open Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. If you would like to support the pod financially, we are sponsored by HinduHandcrafts.com. That's HinduHandcrafts.com. Please visit HinduHandcrafts.com for Hindu religious-based items such as framed pictures, wall plaques, tapestries, t-shirts, clocks, and so on. They are perfect for puja use and home decor gifts. Until next time, Jai Shri Ram.